So today's topic is going to be prayer as vacuum. Wow. Why not? Let's look at it. Let's look at things differently, right? We need to explore these things not from a religious perspective, but as I look at, when I think of this idea of God, to me it's I sometimes refer to God as cosmic intelligence. It's an intelligence of some sort, but not even in the way that we know intelligence. It's something beyond. It creates, and yet it's sort of the spontaneous manifestor of creation. And, Babaji says that God has no mind. So God, by design, cannot be a judging God, cannot be evaluating. It's just some principle that creates. And my other spiritual master after Babaji, Chariji, said, God creates and human beings are in charge of evolution, which is a scary thought. As we see in the world today, we're not managing evolution very well right now. But we can, and we will, and we're getting to that. So I have a lot of faith in we human beings that we're going to awaken and we're going to work towards turning this planet around. So we're going to do that. So, what I just said is actually relates to this topic of prayer as vacuum, because, we think of let me back up. So somewhere, I think early people, I think that they may have, and this is, I'm just guessing here, I think that they may have known more about the science of prayer and the science of connection. And then I think what happened is God became more of an anthropomorphic God, human beings making God like us, that's when, prayer started to shift, because then prayer started to become more conversational. We created God, we manifested God as somebody like us, maybe an old guy with a beard, maybe who knows what, maybe a statue, maybe a stone, whatever it is. We decided, and then we made it powerful by thinking about it as something powerful. So we gave God a lot of power over us, and then we felt like we had to depend on that God that we infused power into to help us. So it's been kind of a funny situation. What did we do there? What happened there? And then now we have to pray to this God to help us. And yet, the divine is within us. He's right here. So I think if we need to reevaluate our understanding of our relationship with the divine, with God, and these concepts. And I think the word God, is very much out of popularity now. No one likes to hear this word. But, Daji said something interesting. He said, I've searched and searched and searched for another word for God. He said, and I haven't been able to find one. So I think I've thought about that a lot too, and sometimes I say things like, the higher self, or, we call it many things, but I think the word God is something that we need to sort of re-understand, because the word itself is so unique. It just stands alone. And no matter what other words we try and give it, again, we're back to that, in a way, we're back to that, making it a human concept. So this word God, I think, is okay if we redefine it. So how do we connect? How do we petition our higher self within? What do we do when we are really in dire straits, when we're hurting, when there's maybe been a death of a loved one, or we're in a situation that we feel overwhelmed by and we don't know what to do, Well, historically, we go within and we pray. But the historical prayer is one of asking. So we're asking for a solution. But in the asking of the solution, we are defining the solution that we want. Like, oh, please help my, brother-in-law because, he has a drinking problem or whatever it is, and, please help him stop drinking. This is the way we have approached prayer is, here's the problem I'm facing or my friend's facing, and here's really, God, this is really what they need to do to fix that. So I need you to fix that for me. So that's what I'm asking. So that's been the historical method of prayer. But, it's not really, is that really the best way of receiving help? Because, it's said that silence is the language of God. So if silence is the language of God, then it makes sense that we have to learn that language in order to receive and to communicate with this thing we call God. And there's a little saying that prayer is asking and meditation is receiving. Prayer is asking and meditation is receiving. So, we do have two parts here to this equation. So there is sort of a prayerful aspect, and then there's the receiving aspect, which we as meditators together have been working on. And you find that as you become a better meditator, you do get in touch with the higher self within. And the way we do that, and the reason we are able to do that, is because we're reducing the amount of mental activity, which is acting like, waves of static, that clouds, okay, they're acting like clouds. We can't see the sun because there's so many clouds of thoughts. And Babaji said an interesting thing one time. He said that if we could see thoughts, he said thoughts cover the world more than clouds. So that puts it in a very profound visual. So Babaji has given some tips about how we make this prayerful connection. He said that when we are able to settle down all of that static and put ourselves into a prayerful state, okay, we've talked about meditative states. Now let's talk about a prayerful state. He said, what happens is we've immediately created a resonance with that subtlest, deepest part of ourselves, the part where we are connected, the part which we can call our original mind, our original self. So when we do that in a state of silence, without words, and we often see these pictures with the hands like this or like this. I mean, these are powerful gestures because they're bringing us to a sense of oneness. I'm bringing myself to a sense of connection. I bring myself to a sense of immediate oneness and connection. The prayerful state is one that is natural to us. It's natural to us to enter that state in such a humble way. Just placing ourselves with a longing heart. Before what? We don't know. But before that which we know is there as the source of our being. The source. And the source of our being, just as we are the source of our problems, the real source is the source of our solutions. And we are that source. We are that source. The only thing that's standing in between is personal identity. And of course, that's part of ego. And what's ego all about? Self-preservation. So these are the things that stand in the way of having an effective, prayerful state. So this is something that can be, just like meditation, can be practiced. it can be practiced. Now, when we can enter immediately we can enter this prayerful state. Unlike meditation where the mind has to settle, when we're in a situation that's dire, we enter the prayerful state without any problems. No problem. You want to be spiritual and you're having problems, just fall on your knees and pray, and you will instantly be in the prayerful state, right? Because we immediately let go of ourselves. We totally let go. And the ego lets go. And we're in such a state of humble, receptivity. And sort of we are presenting ourselves in the purest way. We're presenting ourselves to the highest ideal, the highest self inside. So in prayer, we coalesce with the silent presence. I'll say that again. In the prayerful state, we coalesce with the silent presence. By coalesce, we become one with that for the time being. We are part of that. And when we enter that state, we have a resonance there. And that source then begins to resonate. Oh, part of myself has a need. It feels that vibratory aspect. And when we enter that type of prayerful state, that's when that highest self can go to work for us. Not necessarily in the way we want, but providing the solution for to fulfill the needs of our deepest needs. And we may not even understand what those really are. Often our prayers are representational of something that's deeper. We think we want an outcome, but the outcome that's best for us isn't the one that we think about. And then after the fact, we may realize, oh no, that's what happened is what happened. So this is why I call this prayerful state the vacuum. Now, I want to share a story that another friend of ours, my wife and I's, he did this practice with us for a very long time. And we were with Chariji, who was our spiritual guide down in Atlanta. And this person, he proposed he was always good at asking these great questions, So he proposed this really good question to Chariji. He said, and I'm going to paraphrase, it was something like this. He said, Chari, he said, so, I can understand that we're trying to get to a point where we're going beyond our identity and we're reaching a point where it's almost like the vacuum. And he said, so that's the objective, right? It's to become like the vacuum. And Chariji said something very scientific and profound. He said, yes, but there's something else. And our friend said, well, Chari, how could there, no, Chari, how could there be something else? It's a vacuum. There's nothing else in the vacuum. And then he gave the absolute zinger. Chari said, no, there's the power of the vacuum. Oh my gosh, wow. There's the power of the vacuum. Now, if you are science minded or know a little bit about science, we know that a vacuum is one of the most powerful things. Nature and space by design abhors a vacuum. It doesn't want to have a vacuum. It tries to fill it. Okay? So a vacuum is always trying to be filled. But Chariji says, in a pure vacuum, there's still something there, and that something is the power of the vacuum. Now, you can imagine now, when we put ourselves into this humble, prayerful state, we are not only vacuumizing ourselves, but by vacuumizing ourselves, we are pulling within that power of the vacuum. We're being able to utilize the power of the vacuum. So this is a very subtle concept. Okay, it's a very subtle concept, but we need to think about these things in terms of vibration, because we are energetic beings. Everything we do is vibration. Our whole body is full of vibrations happening at all kinds of levels. Every type of cell is vibrating at a different type of vibration. So we're vibratory and energetic beings. So this makes a lot of sense, that how powerful prayer can be when we master this sort of lost art. And we tie this into prayer asking or presenting. Prayer is presenting. And then meditation is the receiving part of it. We can start to see how powerful a practice this is when we put these two things together. Okay. Now, Babaji has said, and he talks about this from the aspect of our individual, sort of a progression, individually our progression. But it applies to us as a society as well. He said, where religion ends, spirituality begins. We're seeing that. A lot of people have left the ideas of religion, which is so, divisive, creates divisions. My God is better than yours, and becoming spiritual, which is we embrace the fact that we don't have all the answers, but we believe that there's something higher, we're part of that. So Babaji says where religion ends, spirituality begins. Then he says where spirituality ends, reality begins. So we even transcend these spiritual conditions and ideas. Then he says where reality ends, bliss begins. So we become so free of all of our conditioning that we're just, by nature, we're happy, contented, blissful beings, by nature. And he said where bliss ends, that's really the beginning of our real journey, as we've returned back to our pure self. And then we go on and on. It's, we are as I've said many times, we are the great divine beings of light in this universe that think that we're these small, helpless, poor souls. So the reason I want to bring that up in this context is that in this progression, there's a lot of letting go involved, letting go of old concepts and embracing something that's totally fresh and new for ourselves. And here's what I would like to say. And I wrote this down because I don't want to miss any of these words, If we think from a religious and even a spiritual perspective, we have these words that define a lot of that for us. These words are faith, love, devotion, longing, peace, prayer, surrender, and many, many other words too. So we as human beings have come up with these words, and we use them to define certain aspects that we have defined as this spiritual aspects or spiritual journey or religious journey. But what I want to say is in our progression from religion to spirituality to bliss, or to reality to bliss and beyond, I think we're going to understand these words in the future very, very differently. And perhaps we'll understand that when we say something like having Being devoted, for example, a very powerful word. And Daji speaks a lot about this bhakti or devotional aspect. So if we think of it from a religious perspective, we think about someone being devotional as devotional to God, devotional to, their path, devotional to this or that. But actually, if we really strip away all of the definitions, it's a way of expanding our own consciousness. Okay? When we become devotional in that, we become open, we become receptive. It becomes a force that expands us, our consciousness. Right now, we call it devotion. In the future, we may call it something else. And it may not have a spiritual or religious context. It may be yet another level of understanding. How do we move in this physical world? Well, the physical moves the physical. How do we move in the realm of thought? Well, I've talked about this. Thought moves thought. How do we move in the realm of consciousness? How do we expand in the realm of consciousness? You see? That's where we are still using some of these words to describe how we move. We move by love, it expands. Fear, it contracts. Okay, these are the words we use. Devotion, it's expanding. So when we come to this idea of prayer, we should be able to transcend the religious meaning of the word. And we can think of it as an offering. We can think of it as a presenting. I'm presenting where I am right now. It's a check-in with the highest self. This is what I am. And just with a heart so wide open to become. And that's when we can resonate with and evoke. We evoke that highest self within us. It's not outside of us, within us. Then to come to the fore. You've heard me say that the highest self is it's like a shy thing. It's not easily coaxed out to the surface. Okay, because it's the subtlest thing within us. Our highest self is the subtlest thing. And any sort of vibration that we're creating here through our senses, the shy self is like, okay, you go do your thing, But when we practice meditation in a prayerful state, we can evoke the higher self and get in touch with that more and more and more until the day comes when the shy self is no longer so shy and it becomes we become one. Unity, union, yoga. We become one with that. This is why these things are all important. Okay. Now, I'm going to go a few more minutes that I want to tackle a couple things here. So in Heartfulness, there's a prayer that's said at bedtime. And this prayer has been one that, especially for Westerners and particularly Americans, a lot of people don't adapt it because it's got a lot of words that are very religious sounding. It's very religious sounding overall because it was, it came to Babaji, back in the 1940s, which were a time when, we spoke about spiritual things in a religious sort of way. But the prayer itself has a lot of meaning. So I want to briefly go into this. So this prayer is, I'll say the whole thing and then I'll explain the three parts, is, O Master, thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God and power that can bring us up to that stage. So, on the surface, we have words that immediately make us cringe. Thou, master, slave. I mean, There's no way I was saying that prayer when I started this. And if you look on my website, you'll see the first letter I got from Babaji, who told me in the last sentence, because he knew I wasn't saying the prayer, obviously. He said, saying the prayer of the mission is important, is needed. So he knew I didn't like the prayer. So anyway, what the prayer means, if we want to look at it, and the meaning evolves. It means, oh Master, thou art the real goal of human life. Okay, the Master is the higher self within. It's the Master within. We're moving towards a union with that higher self. And when we attain that, that is something we call self-mastery. It's not that you become a master, not like that, but you have self-mastery. Oh Master, thou art the real goal of human life. So we're stating, there's a goal for me. It's my highest self within, and that will lead me to self-mastery. Second phrase is, we are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Why doesn't it say we are yet but slaves of desires? Well, desire is something that requiring immediate fulfillment, but we're yet slaves of wishes, because our wishes are always planting seeds of a want in the future. So we are actually sabotaging ourselves all the time by having wishes for things and by planting these seeds of wishes in the future for us. So in a way, we become slaves of those wishes because they're there in the future to ensnare us. We've planted them. So we're yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Because now, how can we advance when we're continually planting these seeds in our future that are things that we want or desire? You see? Then the last line is, thou art the only God and power to bring us up to that stage. Okay. So now we've gone through this succession, is that, oh Master, putting the Master outside of ourselves in a way, thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes. It's still acknowledging that there's both we collectively and a we as me, Brian, and my higher self. But then the third phase is the phase of emergence. It's the humble phase. It's the prayerful state when we say, thou art the only God or divine or whatever we want to say, and power that can bring us up to that stage. So in a way, we're taking the help of a spiritual guide, if you want to think about the spiritual guide and make it prayerful for the spiritual guide. If you would like to take this prayer and just make it completely internal and are referring to that higher self within, the Master within, all of those things are fine. So it's a very deep and powerful prayer. And I will send that all to you in writing. I will do that so that you have it. Now, I'm going to offer up something as someone who has had an aversion to this prayer, okay? And so I'm going to offer up another simple prayer. And I'm not saying this is a replacement for that prayer. I'm just saying that I was walking through the woods one day and I was just pondering the divine and just feeling the spiritual presence around me and being in nature and everything. And a prayer literally descended into my mind and heart from a higher state. And I want to share that prayer with you because it's so simple that you won't have to even write it down. So the prayer is, and I'll give you a couple options as far as the beginning, but I'll use the word Master. So the prayer is, O Master, take this little self of mine and replace it with yourself sublime. Now, you can also use the word heart. You can say, oh heart, take this little self of mine and replace it with yourself sublime. As soon as you think this prayer, we enter that prayerful state. It's so incredibly simple. So I invite you, I'll type it in the chat, okay? I'll do it right now because it's so simple. I use the word heart, but you find your own word that you would like, what you relate to. And let me send this to everyone. There it is. If you find this is useful as a tool for this prayerful state, feel free to use it. It's okay. So with that, we've gone long today, and I knew we would because this is such a big topic, and it's the second half of our spiritual practice along with meditation. So let's meditate together. We're going to meditate for about 20 minutes or so. And so I invite you all to sit very comfortably. And if you're new and attending for the first time, I will guide you into what we meditate on. Then there will be a period of silence for about 15 minutes. And then I will say that's all and guide us out of the meditation. So today I'll guide us into the meditation, and we'll add this prayerful aspect before we go into meditation. So let's take a slow, deep breath in. And let it go. Very gently, bring your attention to the area of the heart. And just rest on the heart. Feel the heart is softening. Feel the lightness in the heart. Now let's rest on the source of that lightness, the source of that softness already present in the heart. And let's start with this simple prayer. O heart, take this little self of mine and replace it with your self sublime. And let's feel the source is drawing us inwards. Let's stay with that thought. So many conflicts and self-worry and self-judgment. Oh, I know, I've had a whole life of this, It's so tiring. It's exhausting. We scrutinize ourselves, and I don't think that's really good for us to do it. We all do it, because we have conscience too. And sometimes, we are doing something that's not the right thing, But then there's that other part of ourselves that we kind of extend the woe is me, why did I do that? Oh, I'm not a good person, or da-da-da. That part of it, we just need to get rid of that side. Everybody's an amazing person. The world is full of amazing, great people. The world is only a reflection of a small group of bad people, or people who are really, have self-preservation as their agenda. The rest of the world is just awesome. It's my thinking.
Great, thanks.
All right, my friends, going once, going twice. Gone. Okay. All right. Let's all get off to the rest of our day. I thank you again so much for being here. It's an honor to be with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you this week or next Saturday. All the best. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Bye.
All the best for everyone.
Beautiful.